Hello classmates and Professor Sol, here is Andrea Camila, and today I'm going to talk about my thoughts and reflections of the ideas about learning a foreign or second language. So, many ideas have been presented that summarize the central points that are of great importance for those of us who are interested in learning and then later teaching languages. For instance, talking about learning through imitation, I think it's partially useful for acquiring the first language. We can observe babies when their parents talk to them, they repeat what they say. It could be considered an example of imitation. However, it has been studied that children do not imitate or repeat everything they heard. They select certain words and then adapt them to their inner processes, which then improve over time as they expand their vocabulary and improve their comprehension skills. So it can be considered a bit helpful, but well, now, looking at the point of view of the second language acquisition, it is said that learning through imitation is only useful for learners who are at an advanced level in the process, so it is not applicable in the field of second language teaching. For I consider imitation is not enough to learn, like it's missing so many factors. For instance, formal teaching. Formal teaching is necessary to take advantage of this learning through imitation. Besides imitation, a very important factor is parents. They are major influencers in the process of language acquisition. For example, they have in their hands the responsibility to be the first voices a baby their baby heard. It is also up to them which language the baby will speak. For example, in cases of families with bilingual parents, the couple probably want the baby to speak both languages. But now, it is also known that parents usually correct the children when they make mistakes, any mistakes. But talking about mistakes in speech, in grammar, in language, when their child is speaking or speaks, I consider that parents, unless the parents of the learner are involved in the field of linguistics and languages, their main concern is that your message to communicate is clear, your needs are expressed assertively. In the case of bilingual parents, I find it really interesting to think that they test their children by having them to acquire 2 languages instead of 1. So, I will think that the job for correcting errors becomes more burdensome for them. Now, talking about parents, it is up to them also which institution the child will study in, and whether a second language is taught in this institution and from what age the child can learn it.
So speaking of age, it is also worth mentioning that it's commonly believed that the younger a child is put to study a language, the faster or better his or her performance will be.
This may be partially true, but it should be emphasized that in order for the student to learn a second language easily and quickly, it is necessary that the mother tongue has a strong foundation in the student. So, the mother tongue is basically the one that provides the basic tools to be able to learn more languages. Now, if we talk about formal teaching, for example, in the most common institutions here in Colombia, I think about public schools, The level offered in these institutions is very vague and does not give the quality that a young learner requires. So it seems that there is yet another extra responsibility for the parents to place their children in specialized institutes if they want their children to acquire an outstanding level of a second language. Clearly, I cannot fail to mention that there are more factors that affect this decision, such as how to afford these expensive institutes, because they truly are, or whether the quality of the teachers there is adequate and the type of curriculum used, and more. So as a brief conclusion of this point, I consider that parents, in addition to having the responsibility to raise human beings responsibly, derive from the many characteristics that will later be observed in their children's process of learning or acquiring a second language. Now, about motivation and intelligence and other attributes that can be noticed in people, I think they play a very important role in the process. But talking about motivation, well, the learner or the person who is interested can leave all the weight to motivation. Motivation or feeling motivated is very fluctuating, in my opinion, and maybe changing over time. Motivation keeps, well, it is true that motivation keeps the learner engaged in the process. It provides the students with interest, and with that, the learner keeps encouraged to go forward in the process of learning. Nevertheless, the reality is that in the process, the learner is going to encounter difficult issues that will challenge him or her, and well, that is completely normal. Yeah, it's part of the process. It is at these determined points, I will say, motivation can be seen to be in the limbo, to be shaky. That's where focus, discipline, and perseverance come in. A focused student who believes in herself or himself and is disciplined will be able to overcome these difficult issues by creating his or her own source of motivation. So, additionally, if we look at the learner's intelligence, aptitude, personality, and learner styles, we realize that these internal factors have a great weight in the advancement of the process. So, in order to be successful in the process of learning a second language, it is necessary to make use of many skills to achieve the desired goal, yeah? Therefore, it challenged the learner to develop a variety of strategies in order to strengthen and finally succeed in the process. Now, by far, I have mentioned imitation, learning through imitation, parental influence, motivation, and internal factors. Now, it is worth mentioning a big element in the process: the teachers. The teaching in the classroom, in the area where, as students, we set out to learn. It is said that teachers should present simple structures in grammar and over time increase the difficulty of these structures. And it is also said that teachers should expose to the students or well show to the students material that uses the structures already taught. And additionally, it is mentioned that teachers should use other ways of correcting the student instead of pointing out his or her mistakes. Well, regarding to the structures and when to teach them to the students, we have to take into account that no matter how many standards or policies must be followed, the program that is carried out in the institutions is not the same in all parts, in all parts of the world or in all parts of the countries. Therefore, in the end, deciding what structures are taught and at what time is defined by the context, the environment in which the student and the teacher find themselves. That's what I think. As for the material, I consider that the most useful thing will be to expose the student to material that is not so easy to understand, but not so difficult that it will frustrate him or her. The material should be slightly challenging, stimulating to that stimulates the student's brain to solve questions, to solve issues, that he or she himself or herself can solve, and thus create the feeling, the sensation that is improving. And finally, about the way of correcting, wow. In this part, I personally consider that is the most demanding part of being a teacher. Correcting in itself is no something simple. So that can done that if it's done in a bad or awful way, can actually hurt the student and will lower the energy to learn. That's why requesting is one of the most used and practical ways to correct students, to give feedback. In this way, the teacher shows the student in an appropriate way what she or he is doing wrong and what should do for improve that without making the student look bad in front of the class and, for example, making him or her feel ashamed for making mistakes or that making mistakes is something really bad and that is something terrible. And well, in fact, is a part of the normal life, it's part of the process, it's part of everything. So the important thing is to remember that we have to learn from these mistakes to improve. So we have reached the end of this video. I hope you like it, and well, thank you so much for watching.